is so poor? How could a place that holds trillions of dollars in rare minerals, gems, and other resources be so incredibly impoverished? And for many, the answer is simple enough. Africa is poor because of the legacy of colonialism. The narrative usually goes something like this. Europe's great powers invaded, conquered, and pillaged Africa of its raw resources, leaving the continent impoverished to this very day. Now, more than 60 years after the end of colonial rule, the continent is still struggling to overcome decades of exploitation at the hands of the European powers. It's a compelling narrative, and many people believe it. But the problem is, it doesn't seem to be telling the whole story, and here's the proof. Consider the story of another ex-colony that gained its independence around the same time as most African nations. Singapore.
Now, listen to this bullshit that he about to get into, right? Because he's trying to refute the fact that colonization destabilized Africa, even though we know it did. But you in the Midwest of me to say I'm in Florida. Look, we on the brink of being cold. It's Florida cold right now. It's Florida cold. So, I feel sorry for y'all. But listen to this. So he's about to compare a continent that was colonized for over 400 years to a country that was colonized for a few, maybe a decade, maybe a few decades, and left alone. So remember that a whole continent that was colonized for over 400 years is being compared to a country that was colonized for maybe a few decades and left alone, because Africa is still to this day being colonized and graped of its resources. Says that's where he's wrong. Colonials, exactly. It hasn't ended in Africa. It hasn't. Right. Hey man, look man, that's why I love my audience. We smart over here. But let's continue listening to the lies. Hold on. Let me let him say it. You lying. You ain't never met Dr. Martin Luther King. Oh, that line.
Former British colony with virtually no natural resources has risen to become one of the wealthiest nations in the world. Today, Singapore is actually richer on a per capita basis than its former colonizer. So if colonialism doesn't tell the entire story there, is there anything else that can explain why Africa specifically is so poor? Well, one interesting factor is Africa's geography. The economist Thomas Sowell points out that
And when white people mention Thomas Sowell, you know it's about to be some bullshit, but he about to blame it on geography and not white supremacy. White people be wilding, man. White supremacists be wilding.
Geography has hindered the continent's development for centuries and continues to do so to this very day. For example, while Europe's long coastline and plentiful natural harbors helped to facilitate a strong maritime trade all the way back to classical antiquity, Africa has had.
But you got to remember when True Pilgrim, you got to remember when the white folk first pulled up in Africa. When they first pulled up in Africa and started colonizing.
Few of these features. In fact, the continent actually has less coastline than Europe, despite the fact that it's much bigger. It has very few deep water ports, and with the exception of the Nile, none of Africa's major rivers are easily navigable all the way to the ocean. These geographical problems create huge challenges to trade in Africa, but geography is not destiny. Just look at Botswana. This sub-Saharan country has set records for economic growth despite being landlocked in the middle of the Kalahari Desert. While Botswana does have plenty of diamonds, it lacks many of the other major natural resources, rivers, or harbors that many of its neighbors do. And yet, Botswana is one of the richest nations in Africa with a strong and growing economy. The story of both Botswana and Singapore show that the true culprits behind Africa's persistent poverty has to be something else. Now consider this. In the Tanzanian Constitution in 1965, it discussed the government's role to, quote, prevent the accumulation of wealth to an extent which is inconsistent with the existence of a classless society. This Marxist sentiment was not unusual in sub-Saharan African governments post-colonialism. The bottom line is, many former colonies have not only overcome prior subjugation, but have thrived both politically and economically. But they all seem to have something in common. Instead of trading colonialism for Marx, they adopted systems which encouraged private property rights while at the same time embracing stable governments which established dependable legal systems and then courted foreign investment. The good news is there is hope for countries still struggling to develop, but history suggests that it will come not only through political freedom, but economic freedom as well.
So it's some bullshit. True Pilgrim's comment is right on point. The pillaging of Africa never stopped. The European nations are still in control. Arabs came in, gained control. Even Asians came in, gained control over resources and things. What is he talking about? This is the blatant racism, the blatant lying that be happening right in front of our faces. Like we don't have information, like we don't read books. And they really think we don't read. They think we can't read. I know a lot of Negroes be out here acting foolish and stuff, but we all don't behave like that, right? So it's a lot of us out here who got good minds, who can think and who can read and process information and understand what the hell is going on and what somebody is telling us and be able to say that is some bullshit. That's some bullshit. What my man told him. What my man told him.
Lying. You ain't never met Dr. Martin Luther King.
Your ass is lying, Mr. White Man. You lying. Right? We know the main reasons why the continent is in disarray right now. It's the presence of colonization. We read Destruction of Black Civilization. So now we're talking like a 6,000 year period that Chancellor Williams covered. We read that. I'm just saying. It was a big bank take little bank. Yep. Well, see, if you look at the world through a white supremacist lens, O'Neal, my dear brother O'Neal, if you look at the world through a white supremacist lens, then you will believe that Africa wasn't civilized. If you can't read and process information, if you can't find the correct information, read and process information, you will believe that Africa wasn't civilized. But that's why we read what we read over here. Check out my Monday book reviews. Y'all got to check out my Monday book reviews. That's why we read what we read, how we read, and I let you all choose the books. But that's the idea out there that there was no greatness in Africa. Nothing happened in Africa. And all of the turmoil that's happening in Africa is because of them. And this dude is blaming it on the geography and the lack of, I guess, innovation from the Africans. Just disregarding all of the history that came before the Europeans. All of the greatness that existed before then, forget it. You know, Timbuktu didn't exist. Gal didn't exist. Tarseti didn't exist. You know, Kush didn't exist. No, none of these great kingdoms, the kingdom of Zimbabwe didn't exist. None of these great civilizations and great kingdoms existed. It was all a mystery. Mansa Musa wasn't real. Samori Toure wasn't real. You know, Sundiata Keita wasn't real. Ghana, Mali, and Songhai, that didn't exist. Come on, man. Let's stop it. That's weak because we can read and process information over here. I'm a truck driver and I'd appreciate an opportunity to speak with you. Email me. Where's that? Where I put it at? Email me. ontheshoulders1@gmail.com. Holla at me. Says we can't romanticize the place, fam. Some of it was civilized. No, I'm not saying all of it was one thing, but what we're not gonna do is act like there was no civilization. What we're not gonna do is act like we didn't build anything that was not revered by the world. We didn't have the top educational centers in the world. We didn't have like top civilization before they were ramshacked by the outsiders. I'm not saying all of Africa wasn't like that. What I am saying is we had grand civilizations before the white folks showed up. That's what I am saying. Peace, King. Hey, man, hit me up. Email me. People do be hating themselves. But that's what, when we see the world through a European lens, that's what happened, right? Anywhere will regress if it's under continued war, strife, and competing interests. I'm just saying. It will continue. It will continue to regress. What will nurture it to grow, especially under the thumb of an oppressor? How will it grow? It's toxic soil. Nothing grows in toxic soil. Comment gets a star. Anything under the rule of white supremacy that doesn't benefit the system of white supremacy and the white supremacy is siphoning from will regress. Guess you don't conduct panel discussions. Not yet. Not yet. But you know, one day, but not yet. Lying lies at the core white supremacists. The destruction of black civilization gave me an excellent understanding of Africans that I never knew and they'd never tell. I'm just saying. But it also gave us a perspective of ourselves as well, Ricardo, of things that we should have learned from reading that book. Because I think Kobe Cambone, the video that I put out of Kobe Cambone, I believe it was him saying that we missed a lot of, I'm not saying you did, but it reminded me of what he said. Like, a lot of us missed the lessons in destruction of black civilization because we were caught up in, like, I'm so glad we learned this history, but he gave solutions at the end. But what were the lessons that you learned from the book? And one of the greatest lessons that I got from it is when black people went away from our African code of conduct, when we turned our backs on what we did as African people, that allowed the others to be able to come in and take it down. PH Diva, how you doing? It's going down. You know, it's going down. So you think you are an African? Come on. Hey man, look, brother. Hey, agree to disagree. Agree to disagree. Hey, agree to disagree. I'm not getting into that. Call yourself what you want. I don't get into all that. We know history. I know where I'm from and I know history. I don't get into all that. I know I'm a black person from America. I know that, but I know history as well. I know enough black folk was brought here. So I don't get into all that. So Africa was civilized, but it wasn't. But I will say though, Africa have a lot of culture and there was no right. Yeah, that was one of the biggest issues. I talk about it all the time. The tribalism that was played upon, the Europeans played upon tribalism. You are correct, O'Neal. You are correct. So let's listen to this pastor buck dancing for the white people.
Here, and I'm not going to be much longer with y'all. I understand we need to move beyond color. I'm not about that, but y'all raised it. If you start it, I'll end it for you. Don't start nothing, it won't be nothing. But we got a problem. Black people got a problem. Now we can move to color blindness and always look at the man by the content of his character, never the color of his skin. I'm down for that. You get my vote. Yay and amen. I'm for that. But before we get there, we need to hear some truth. Black people and white folk. Black people got a problem. And it's a God problem. When black people see the world, I don't care. You can train them. You can train a black man to be a physician. You can train him to be an astrophysicist. You can train him to be a lawyer, but you can't train him to understand the world. He doesn't know. I'm telling you. There's not 2 cents worth of difference between a mass murderer. There's not 2 cents of difference between a petty thief that's locked away in prison than a black doctor when it comes to understanding the world. Listen, you listen to me. We got to deal with this. And we need to begin to acknowledge it, talk about it, ask God to help us, because only God can help black people where they are. Black people had Africa, that big old continent over there. They never built one boat that was seaworthy. Not one. There's not one monument in Africa, in all of Africa. I know you're talking about Egypt. Egypt is not Africa. There are no great cities that were built. Even before the first colonization of white people coming to the shores of Africa or the slave ships, black men built nothing. No sewer system, no houses above one level, and none of them made out of stone, all of them made out of grass and wood. Black men, before the white man ever got to Africa, the worst thing that could ever happen to South Africa was when they gave it to Nelson Mandela and black folk. That was a great nation. Now, notwithstanding apartheid was wrong, we all know it's wrong. I'm against it. There should have been some other resolution, though, than turning it over to Nelson Mandela. Disease, AIDS, and crime is running wild in Johannesburg. They're killing one another over there. They're dying of sickness. The government is mismanaged. The people who ran the nation are now leaving the nation because black folk don't know how to run no nation. They don't know how, and we need to admit it. I know you don't like it, but you need to stop shucking and jiving. We got a problem. Nigeria.
That's funny he say shucking and jiving, but notice everybody's judging the state of Africa after colonization. He is, the white guy did, and these coming up are going to do that. They're looking at Africa after colonization, and then because the dismissal is Africa didn't build anything before the white people got there. That's the dismissal, even though we know like there's definitive evidence, like still in Africa, like actual physical evidence of civilizations that existed before the white people got there, right? But according to this pastor, nothing happened. Seeing the world through white eyes, right? Buck dancing for the white dollar. I'm just saying, black people have rich culture but poor unification on a large population basis, right? Like, but I think once again, black people, anybody throughout the diaspora needs to understand that as a whole, and you tell me if you found the information, because I haven't found the information, but I've yet to find information to prove that African people were united as a continent at any one point. I don't know. I haven't found that information. Different groups of people existed throughout the continent. Different groups of people had alliances and stuff, but I never found any information to say the continent as a whole, like all African people at one point saw themselves as the same. I haven't found that, so I agree with that, O'Neal. But you know, the rhetoric that this reverend is speaking, once again, he's looked at as a respected figure, because we're gonna look at some of these comments too. He's looked at as a respected figure. He's someone that people is listening to, an authority figure, and he's preaching damnation on black people, right? Because we're not capable of building anything and running anything, because we never have and we never will. You know, according to him, the Ghana Empire never existed. You know, the Great Zimbabwe never existed. No, we don't even have to talk about Egypt. We don't even really have to get into Egypt, but you know, they always dismiss Egypt, even though we have enough information to know that Egypt, especially the greatness of Egypt, everything great about Egypt come from the black people that come from up the Nile or down the Nile, from the interior, the black people that came from the South. Oh yeah, he awful. He can go to hell in the handbasket. He said he got some valid points, and white supremacists see a Johnny Cochran as a couple steps from a Jack boy, and there was no African unification on the. Yeah. I mean, I'm not dismissing everything, but what I am saying is to talk about African people. Basically, he said a black doctor at the top of his field has the same worldview as a criminal. what? He'd never say that about white people. Like the lowest white person, I bet you he feel has a better, well, he's saying they got a better worldview than even the brightest black person. Like we know we got some throwaways, some black folk who not gonna make it, but everybody has that. But of course, everybody like to make that the main point about black folk, though. But to act like we didn't build anything, to act like black people had nothing, everything was just straw and grass, really? Come on, man. We got enough information to prove it wrong. We read Destruction of Black Civilization. We read the book. The book gave a rundown of black civilizations. I'm just saying, but all right, Reverend.
Produces oil every year, yet the children over there are hungry and pot-bellied and walking barefoot. We got a problem. You talk about the Hutus and the Tutsis. Look what's going on in Zimbabwe now with Mugabe. We got a problem, black folk. And forget about Zimbabwe and South Africa, Nigeria. Look at what y'all have done in Harlem. You can't even hold on to Harlem. We got a problem. Black folk don't understand the world. You can get mad with me all you want. You can say what you, but you can't prove me wrong. Now, I'm not saying this because I hate black folk.
Yes, you
I'm
are.
saying it because I love you enough to tell the truth. And the only person going to ever help us get out of the situation is going to be God. There's something wrong with the black man's mind. There's something wrong with his mind.
Well, I mean, I don't disagree that there's something wrong with the black man's mind, but what is wrong with the black man's mind? What happened to the black man's mind, Reverend? Because, well, I guess black people just woke up one day and said, you know what? We're going to be degenerates. That didn't happen. Man, Renee, this man on that blow. This man on that heroin. This man on that toot. This man on battery acid. Shucking and jiving for the white man. That's what he doing. Shucking and jiving. This is what real coonery looks like. Why is he not? But he not only that, he's overlooking everything that black people built that was destroyed by white people. And I guarantee you, he knows the information. He's deliberately omitting this information because that's what the white supremacists do. They deliberately omit the information and act like it doesn't exist, like we stupid. Come on, Reverend. Get off your knees for the white man, Reverend. You should be old enough to know by now that they're going to throw you away like everybody else. But hey.
He does not understand the world.
Damn,
he doesn't. I don't care if he learned medicine. He doesn't understand the world. He can't even hold on to Harlem. When he was here, he moved out. We got to talk to the Lord. People, we got to talk to God. And black women, Shirley Chisholm, Harriet Tubman, Coretta King, one of her boys. Yeah, okay, then we got a black president. But you black women, what's wrong with y'all? Y'all gonna let that white woman, what's wrong with you black women voting for Barack? Don't you understand? It should have been a black womb if you're gonna have a black president. What's wrong with you? Y'all ain't got no sense, you black women. Your men treat you like the dogs, like your dogs. They walk all over you. They make you pay the bills at home, and then the preachers pimp you in the churches and make you pay the bills. Y'all crazy black women buying these black men private jets.
Talk about pimping people in the churches. You're doing the same thing, though. You're doing the same thing. You brainwashing your congregation, but okay. He's not lying about the churches, but he's doing the same thing.
$50 million for a nigga to ride around in a private jet, and you talk about, look at our pastor. What's wrong with y'all women? What's wrong with you? What's wrong with you? And what's wrong with a black man that would take that kind of money out of a poor neighborhood and buy himself a private jet? What's wrong with y'all niggas? What's wrong with you? What's wrong with you, black women? What's wrong with you voting for Barack Obama? What's wrong with you? What's wrong with y'all? You niggas are crazy.
So are you. So are you, Reverend Shinebone.
Jackson would have a wand and allow an unhappy black person in America to go where they feel comfortable. What would he allow the whites in South Southern Africa to do? And what would he allow the blacks in Southern Africa to do? Okay, very good. Do you get that question, or do I need to reread that one? Or
yeah, no, it kind of cut out there for a second. That's a good question, because colonization.
Hold on, tribal is ignorance. That what I don't agree. I don't excuse me. I don't disagree. Talking about the tribalism in the beginning, but I don't disagree. We do got it. We crazy as hell. We are insane.
Sort of stirs the pot and makes it a little bit more complicated. I mean, do you want to get into the topic of colonization?
Not yet.
A little bit.
We'll just say narrowly.
Okay.
The whites in South Africa and the blacks in South Africa.
Trade them out. I would say that the white people would be allowed to maintain control over the society, because I think that they built a better society compared to the native South African blacks, sub-Saharans that were there previously. And I think that would be to the benefit not just of the colonists, but of the other black people that also inhabit the country. I think it would be for the betterment of everybody. It's a bit of a controversial take, but that's my opinion.
It's not controversial if you're a white supremacist. So we got one here, folks. We got one here.
We can use words, but it's what it is, you know.
No, I'm saying we got one. You're a white supremacist.
What does that mean?
A white supremacist would probably be better defined by a white supremacist. I think they'd probably be mad, like a black guy defining what we are. But I would say simply, a white supremacist is one who believes in the superiority of the white man.
Well, so because
this is a very simple thing.
Superior civilization, that means supreme.
No, it's really the fact that you're in a place called Africa, which is undoubtedly the land of the blacks. And in as much as that's the case, the most reasonable, obvious thing to do would probably be to just tell the whites to go back to a white country. So leave the blacks in the black country, put the whites back in the white country, and let everyone proceed.
And let me give some context. This is a whole 2-hour debate. So earlier in the debate, Marquette asked the white guys if they had a wand to create the world how they want to, what would they do? And the white guys said that they would leave everybody to themselves to do what they do by themselves. And now they're coming back saying that they believe white people should control the black countries because black people don't do it good enough and white people do it better. And they're saying that from their lens through a white supremacist lens. Pan-Africanism is just a word. Unification is an action. We could call yourselves Leroy and it wouldn't matter if true. It's the ultimate goal, but we got to get ourselves right first. Now, I'm with you. I agree. I don't disagree. I'm with you. Keep us on point. But just did want to get that context about this video. In the beginning, he said if he could wave a magical wand, he would leave people to themselves to just be. And now he's coming back saying that he believed that white people should be in control of the blacks because they do it better. Marquette is not gonna escape some of these shots up in here. Marquette is not gonna escape some of these shots. I'm just saying. Kristen, we own it. Says, okay, I appreciate you driving. I appreciate you listening in while you driving, Cheryl. So be safe out there on that road. Please be safe out there on that road. Also, the fact that white supremacists had destroyed every community we created by killing us and destroying what we built. I believe we got worn out with the constant attacks. Yeah, I mean that goes into it. That goes into the program. That's part of the program. Everything we build, they do destroy. That's another lesson that we need to learn. If we build it, we must protect it. If we build it, we must protect it. And we are also behind enemy lines.
But if you're a white supremacist and you say, well, if you leave it to the blacks, they're going to mess it up. And really, it wouldn't matter if they did mess it up because they're messing it up for themselves, right? So it really shouldn't matter. But if you say leave the whites there to rule over them, then I would say that's a white supremacist position. And currently, being that we're not in a debate, I say
we can call it. we can call it white supremacy, but I also included in my answer the betterment of everybody. I mean, it's objectively true that the black people had a higher quality of life in the countries where the colonists came into. So we can call
that's not objectively true.
Okay,
and
we can call it racial superiority.
No, that would not be objectively true. For example, you mentioned, you said blacks had a better quality of life in the places where the whites went in and colonized. Is that correct?
Overall, I would say overwhelmingly, yeah.
Overwhelmingly, okay. And how do you calculate overwhelmingly?
Well, we can talk about Zimbabwe, for example.
How about we talk about Congo?
I don't know a lot about
Zimbabwe, Congo, whatever, but like, show us the evidence of these places before colonization. Show us the evidence of the conditions of these places before colonization, and then show us the evidence of the conditions of these places after colonization. Because you're comparing areas after colonization. So the white folk came in, messed everything up, and then left, and still had control over these areas. And you're looking at these areas like, oh well, they can't rule themselves. Okay, whatever. Since as for the white people, it's nothing new. They've always sought willing vassal states. In neocolonialism, you had the Commonwealth. Yep. That's what they do. They go out and conquer. They wrote that, and that, remember, that's the history that they romanticized. That's why Alexander is the Great. They romanticized this stuff. He's missing. Yeah, misinformed. Oh, gotcha. Misinformed. Yep. Misinformed like a mug. It says we should be practicing Pan-African FBA before we ever consider Pan-Africanism. They don't practice that. Many of us don't like each other. That's why I always say, if you ain't got your stuff together at home, you can't think about what's going on in anywhere else. If you don't got if your house ain't in order, how you gonna help somebody else? I'm just saying. They say white people can run the country better than that. Yeah, all right. I'm just saying. But once again, when you see the world through a white supremacist mind frame, and remember, a lot of us do, because that's a part of the programming. A lot of us do. A lot of black folks see the world through the same lens and don't even know it. Marquette see the world through that lens and he don't even know it. Because Marquette is like, you got to watch the, I think I put a link in the description for the whole video, but he's funny. He's funny. So yeah. Alexander, there you go. Alexander the Weak. America. The solution with Africa is that most leaders in the African continent are controlled by the same colonizers of the past, with the IMF and the World Bank that gives loans. Right. The colonization has not ended. It has not ended. That was stated earlier. It was stated earlier that the true pilgrim said that earlier, that the colonization never ended. It never ended. And we got to remember that. These European countries are still taking from these African countries. But yeah.
Well, how do you calculate it?
I can give you a couple examples.
How do you calculate it?
Well, I'll give you the most important example, which is the Congo. And if you're going to speak about this, especially overwhelmingly, you surely are going to want to be educated on it.
How are they
and
doing?
I say this not to debate, but just merely to teach. So the Congo was colonized by King Leopold, the Belgians, and the atrocities that they committed there are horrible. Some would say it's the greatest genocide that has ever occurred in the human experience in terms of death toll. Others would say that without death toll is the most brutal, because they'd amputate the limbs of children,
they wiped
boys
out
and
millions.
girls, to make sure that they could extract rubber. And when you have examples like this, or just the fact that circa the 1960s, many of the African nations throughout the colonial powers, many of them by war, you mentioned Rhodesia, you call it Zimbabwe, at the time it was Rhodesia. So that would only indicate that the natives were not happy with white rule, or else they would have just left things as they are. So that point is very poor. And that's why I don't debate, because it's,
okay. I mean,
that's why I'm just interviewing you. I don't debate. I just interview you because it's too easy. You gotta let me give a
rebuttal to that at least, because we can use one example, but there's a plethora of other examples.
Well, I just used two. I used the one that I spoke of first, which is the most important one, because if you look at landmass, the Congo is enormous.
Okay.
And then you reference Zimbabwe, Rhodesia, and so I referenced the same one that you referenced, and further it's consistent throughout the entire continent.
Sure.
But again, I'm not debating because I find debates to be too easy. I want
to give you an answer to the question though. So you gave two examples. I'll give two examples. So in Zimbabwe, they implemented land-based reparations that got rid of the white farmers. And after the black people assumed the roles of the white farmers, the average Zimbabwean citizen went into a caloric deficit. The second example I would give is
let's finish the first example before you go on. Because is the second one in Rhodesia as well?
See, you are debating. You are debating.
No, hold on.
You're saying we're not debating. You are debating.
I want it to be noted for the audience that I reached out to one of them. And the reason I reached out to one of them is because I was already on his profile. I wasn't in any particular favor. I was just.
And remember, this whole conversation, everybody in this video sees the world through a white lens. Everybody in this video. I'm just putting that out there.
It's already on your profile. Forest, and I invited one person because I didn't want there to be too many voices at once, just because I want there'll be at times some back and forth because we're talking about race.
Sure.
But there are two of you guys, and just for the ease of the conversation, we'll just try to balance it off and we'll switch back and forth. But the reason that I wanted to hold you to the first example, because if you're going to a different country, then we don't want to leave the other one unfinished. So are you going to a different country, or are you giving a second example in the same country?
I'm giving you a second example in the same country.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, please do. Go on.
I'm playing out the same thing that you did. So
yeah, go ahead.
In the 1960s, there's actually an excellent documentary about this. It's called Africa Audio. You're smart about it. It's also the title.
You got to repeat that because you faded out. You have to repeat that. I want people to hear what you're saying.
Oh, sorry. So I said there's a really fascinating documentary for your audience or anybody who's interested in this topic, from maybe looking at the history of colonization from a different point of view. We can call it white supremacy, but it's just a matter of being open-minded. It's called Africa Audio. It's an Italian documentary, but in some countries it's also called Africa Blood and Guts. And what they show is that within a month of the British colonizers leaving Kenya in 1966, the country falls into complete disaster. Within approximately a month, the native black people commit an atrocity against the Arab people. And there's actual real live helicopter footage where they're marching these people out to the beaches and killing them. Within a month,
How did the African people behave before colonization? Don't give me no half-cocked examples of behavior of black people a month after colonization. Don't give me that. A month after people pulled out, but they still have their influence and they're still taking from the lands. How did black people behave before colonization? That's the question. That's the question on the table. Before colonization, because we're comparing before colonization and after colonization, because they are saying that black people are not capable of running their own countries, running their own civilization. So how did black people behave? What civilizations did we have before colonization? What was our quality of life before colonization? And pick a place in the globe. Pick a place in the globe where people of African descent existed. Pick a place before colonization and let's study the quality of life. Don't give me no half-cocked argument after colonization. You're talking about a month later. Stop it. Stop it. Look, they probably drugged them. But it's a disingenuous argument as well. Let's look at these places before the white man showed up. Where after a month of the British pulling out, a month, they're still destabilized from colonization. How long? First of all, how long were they there? How long was the British there? And after a month of pulling out, they're just supposed to get on the good foot. And you're saying that black people don't know how to run civilizations. Clearly, white man, clearly, Mr. Fro Jackson, y'all boys, you don't know how to run civilizations. Clearly.
They completely disrupt the ecosystem. They killed like 12,000 baby elephants. There's footage of chopped off limbs. It's very disturbing. So in my mind, it's not a matter of race.
I mean, because we can look at the state of Europe before 7/11. Before 7/11 AD, we can look at the state of Europe and see it was in mad disarray. We can look at how Europe was even up to the 1400s. Europe is what it is now because it was able to grape, GRAPE, the African continent, the Caribbean, the Americas. It was able to take from these places. That's why Europe and the United States and all these other Western places are what they are today, because they were able to colonize, kick ass, and take. I'm just saying. But Europe was trash before they were able to take from these other places where black people existed, take their resources and build up Europe. Europe was trash. Hot trash Europe was. Everybody knows it. They call it the Dark Ages for a reason. The bubonic plagues. They didn't even wipe their asses properly. Europe was trash. Come on now. They know it. Europe was trash before that. Before Tariq showed up, before the Africans and the Moors, before Africans, Moors, and the Jewish showed up in Europe, Europe was trash. Europe was transformed by its outsiders. The Renaissance happened because of the outsiders. The blacks, the Semites came in. That's how Europe was transformed. Don't talk to us about some civilizations. And the Americas, the United States of America, they had to obliterate the majority of native populations to build this. They had to obliterate the majority of native populations to build all this stuff over here. Come on now. I'm just saying. Ty, it ain't never late when you here. Hey, y'all. Ty is in the building. It ain't never late. It ain't never late. And you can go back and replay the first half of this. But you in here, Ty. It's all good. You in here now. We calling out these lies. Now, Marquette, I am not on Marquette's side. I like the conversation. I'm not on Marquette. Let me make that clear. I'm not on Marquette's side, but I like the conversation. And I thought it would be something great to debunk. Yeah, Ty up in the building, man. Welcome. But let's get back to these lies. And if you can get past the arrogance of Marquette.
Superiority. It's just
so with Kenya, the Kenya example, it seems unrelated to the core argument. Your core argument is that the blacks were better off under white rule.
So the question was about South Africa originally.
Yeah, the question was originally about South Africa, and then you had essentially stated that the blacks are better off under white rule. I said that, yes, that's white supremacy, and I didn't say that to like insult anyone. I just said that in terms of that's a fundamental driving belief of that kind of thinking, and there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not here to debate that. And then one of you took issue with it. It seemed like it was more so forced at white supremacy, and and so well, then
I take issue with it because I'll allow that brand. It's
sure,
fine.
Let me just give a note. So the Kenya example is very flimsy because it didn't address. One second. The Kenya example is very flimsy because it didn't address like the core argumentative piece, which is that the blacks are better off under the whites. You mentioned the first example of Rhodesia, now known as Zimbabwe, and you mentioned that the caloric intake dove after the white farmers left, and there are reasonable arguments to make. That actually was not one of the better ones. The best argument to make in favor of why the whites should have stayed would be that
they did great.
They were commercial farmers and they had the experience and they had the time invested in being good at that. Just like if you take professionals.
They should have leave people's stuff alone. But that's what colonizers do. That's what colonizers do. But Marquette is also showing himself because they should have stayed. No. Get the hell on. If it's not going to be in the benefit of the native people, but once again, we got to remember, power is taken, it's not given. Freedom is taken, it's not given. We're going to continue to see the world through the lens of the white supremacist, as long as it exists, and as long as we continue to lay down and be oppressed by it, as long as we continue to lay down and be second, third, fourth class citizens, as long as we're comfortable with white supremacy. Like, we keep complaining about it on one end, but on the other end, we don't want it to stop, because then that means the real work has to start for us. Well, then you need to shut up. But yeah, let's get back to it though. Please hit that like button, please, and subscribe, and comment, and share, and all of that.
Out of any situation.
You're right. Africa's doing great.
Now you're interrupting. You don't have to interrupt. You don't have to interrupt. You don't have to interrupt. Like, interrupting is not necessary. We're having a civil conversation. You don't have to interrupt. I notice people only do that when they have a problem with the truth getting out. I've not said anything foul. I'm just responding with facts. Now, with regards to the Zimbabwe situation, one thing you didn't mention, because you mentioned caloric intake, most of these countries are organized with trade, and generally you're going to trade with developed countries. You're going to trade with countries that are free. You're going to trade where there's pre-existing lines of trade. One of the big issues that occurred once the British were taken out of power in Rhodesia is that they had enormous sanctions put onto Zimbabwe. Those sanctions are what crashed the economy. In addition to what you mentioned, which is the exit of the white farmers. I think that was poorly undertaken. However, it was the most genius thing in the world, because there's only one wealth in this world.
Land.
It's land. So being that land is the only wealth, and that is a black land, he returned the land to its true owners so that they could exploit it for themselves. The reason—
colonization at its finest. Colonization at its finest. But you have to understand who you dealing with. You have to understand your enemy. They're not playing games. It's a game to you. That's why we're losing. Remember, black folk, we're at the chessboard with Uno cards in our hand turned backwards.